पहला जो सीन है वो सबसे बढ़िया है उसमें। पहला सीन बस चलते ही जा रहा है 3-3.5 मिनट हो जाते हैं। कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि अगर ये 1.5 घंटे की मूवी ऐसी है, बस सीन ही है, तो भी चलेगा।
मैंने भी सेम बोला था, यही चलने दो, इतनी दिक्कत ही नहीं है।
कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बिकॉज पेरिस अब नहीं देखा है एक्चुअल में, बट देखते से ऐसा लगता है कि हाय काश यहाँ होते।
So anybody who watched the film recently?
Long back, I had a discussion with my father about what is heaven, and I told him, for me, heaven will be a place where I'm able to meet my best writers. If there is not any place where I am able to meet my best writers, then there's no point that place can be called heaven. And after I spoke about it, I was just appreciating myself at the spontaneous impromptu thought that I had. Ki I will someday, when I meet some people who are able to resemble like some writers, I will definitely make a film about heaven where various writers have assembled. And I felt कि यार ये तो almost फिर Midnight Paris से हो गया. मतलब I did not know about the film. I saw it for the first time yesterday, and I felt कि यार ये तो मैंने भी सोचा था. And now people will say that it's inspired from Midnight Paris. So yes, it is. Like I was envious of the protagonist for sure.
For every art geek, art aficionado, or even somebody who has just ventured into art, the film, so I've seen the film, like, it's been at least 7 to 8 months since I've seen the film. Okay, so only the characters and the setting and the context and various scenes are still, inscribed in my mind. But if you ask me what was Owen Wilson's character called, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But nevertheless, still, it's like, for even somebody who has perfunctorily brushed, whose lives have been brushed by art, or who is knee deep into it, a nerd, a geek, or even somebody who's just at a surface level very familiar with it, or just being introduced to the world of art, for them, the film itself is like a tourist guide. It's like a guide for people who feel that art is not accessible, or who are so neck deep into art that they cannot help but imagine their favorite artists, as Bhumika mentioned, their favorite artists and their thinkers meeting together at a cafe and discussing about life or their own tragedies. Because see, these artists are individuals who we have idolized to an extent, because we're reading their works, we're reading what other contemporary filmmakers, thinkers, philosophers have derived from these people at the turn of the 20th century. So these people have already been idolized and eulogized through other artworks on them, or through critical essays, and through thinkers who came after them. The hint of imagination, where you see these people come alive and see them at a table across each other, talking, maybe smoking a cigarette, having like 8-10 cups of coffee, and talking about what makes their ideas groovy and what makes them kick, that itself is a revelation. So Owen Wilson's character is a stand-in for us, actually, who want to dig deeper into the veneer of 20th or 21st century art. And does Paris make art, or does art make Paris what it is? That conundrum is sort of, I would say, the film rests at the heart of that conundrum.
This was a really interesting movie in every sense, I guess, because the movie especially covered a lot of philosophical concepts, and that was particularly what I was really interested in, and because of that I've written so many notes for this. So for different concepts that it covered. Apart from that, also I learned a few new words. I learned the word pedantic that I did not know previously, and some of the most interesting characters, I think Hemingway was really interesting. The things that he said was actually really good regarding even death or those things. We will obviously discuss that, but yeah, so these are really interesting, and even its correspondence to even the Buddhist philosophies was really apparent, which I thought that it was really good. So
starting का जो montage है, जब भी कोई पेरिस दिखाना होता है ना, तो आईफिल टावर, ये सब अच्छे खूबसूरत चीजें दिखाते हैं. पर रिसेंटली मेरे को क्लास में पता चला था कि इनका फ्रांस का लॉ होता है कि गंदगी नहीं दिखा सकते. तो मेरे को ये भी बताना था कि कभी आप गंदगी नहीं देख पाओगे. और स्लमडॉग मिलियनेयर इंडिया में बनी है, फ्रांस में क्यों नहीं बनी है, अमेरिका में क्यों नहीं बनी है? इंडिया का लॉ ऐसे ही है कि बस दंगे नहीं होने चाहिए वरना सब कुछ बना दो. तो ये चीज है कि वहां पे भी गंदगी है लेकिन दिखाती नहीं है.
No, but it makes sense. It makes sense, especially because it's a film about romantics, about people who idolize or romanticize the idea of Paris as a city. So their lens of viewing Paris is limited or is restricted to that, or is that it remains that. Mumbai के लिए भी same होता है ना, romanticize कितना करते हैं. बट उसके कितने एस्पेक्ट्स है मुंबई के, कितने तो दिल्ली के भी, और एनी अदर सिटी एज वेल, डिपेंड्स फ्रॉम वेयर यू कमिंग फ्रॉम, व्हाट योर आइडियोलॉजी इज एंड एवरीथिंग दैट impacts it a lot.
और ये
Film
भी
was made for romantics, by romantics, and about romantics. So
Like if I have to sum up the movie और ऐसे kind of एक word में explain करनी हो like how I perceive it, it is more of like Marvel movie for art, like art genre के लिए Marvel movie. तो आप कोई Marvel movie देखने जाओ और उसमें क्या होता है like if you watch Multiverse of Madness, पिछली कहानियां भी हैं like पुरानी मूवीज से कनेक्टेड है, तो दिस इज लाइक completely connected to art, right? और इतने सारे इसमें आई गेस ईस्टर एग्स हैं. आई वॉच्ड इट पहली बार इन October 2020. I remember that because वो कुछ ऐसे महीने थे when I used to watch around 30-40 movies per month. So like मैं कुछ भी देख रहा हूँ तो इस मूवी में जितने भी मूवी रिलेटेड ईस्टर एग हैं, like I guess आगे बात करते हैं, like मैंने वो सारी मूवीज भी देख ली जो इसमें रेफरेंस दिए हैं. या सो आई रियली लव दिस मूवी. और इतने रेफरेंस हैं, इतना कुछ है, लाइक आई फील कि किसी दिन फुर्सत से आप बैठो तो
Yeah.
पूरा दिन दो तो पूरी आप एक नोटबुक बना सकते हो.
absolutely, I mean, I did not know about, so we were watching the film, Radhika and I, we were also discussing this. बार बार गूगल खोल रहे, देख रहे हैं इसका क्या कनेक्शन था उससे, इसका क्या कनेक्शन था उससे. They never knew the importance of Adriana in Hemingway's story, in Picasso's story, and मतलब पूरा जो उसका आया था. So you don't know कि ये सारे लोग actually मिले भी हो सकते हैं या फिर कैसे कैसे connect हो सकते हैं.
About the movie, I can say that it's very heartwarming. This is sweet बोलेंगे या फिर heartwarming light movie है, funny भी है. अगर आप सोचते हो कि इतने इंटेलेक्चुअल्स है, राइटर्स है, आर्टिस्ट है, उनके बारे में मूवी है तो काफी हैवी होंगी एज इन डायलॉग्स वगैरह, बट देर आर वेरी फनी इंसिडेंसेस इन दैट. जैसे वो एक हो जाता है कि जब वो ओवन विल्सन टेल्स देम कि उनका क्या, ही इज इन वेरी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, ही लव्स two women at one time and he's discussing with all those writers and artists. One of them says that I see a photograph in this, and one says I see a film, and the other one says I see a rhinoceros in it. So ऐसे बहुत से फनी इंसिडेंसेस है उसमें. पहला जो सीन है वो सबसे बढ़िया है उसमें. पहला सीन बस चलते ही जा रहा है, चलते ही जा रहा है, 3-3.5 मिनट हो जाते हैं, फिर वो सीन चलता है, और फिर कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि अगर ये 1.5 घंटे की मूवी ऐसी है, बस सीन सी है, तो भी चलेगा.
मैंने भी सेम बोला था, ये यही चलने दो, इतनी दिक्कत ही नहीं है.
कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बिकॉज पेरिस अब नहीं देखा है एक्चुअल में, बट देखते से ऐसा लगता है कि हाय काश यहाँ होते.
It's a thing, right? We romanticize cities and all. So let's go into that thematic element of the entire film. Thematically speaking, what do you think the film is really about? What do you think it's really trying to tell us from a character standpoint? What is its arc trying to tell us? What do we take away from the film and from a thematic standpoint?
So I think basically the film is an existential film in general. So to understand that, we have to actually even look from the start, from the title itself. It talks about Paris. The film is named Midnight in Paris. So Paris, as we all know, is a romantic city. Now, romance by its very definition means that anything that transcends death. And that is what we see this film actually talks about a lot. The protagonist himself was actually really scared of death, which Hemingway also, when Hemingway inquired, he said that the protagonist said that he was scared of death. Now, why was he scared of death? Hemingway actually said that because he did not actually have a very meaningful relationship with his fiancée, and that is what was one of the elements, that was one of the points at which he did not experience any moment wherein he lost the track of time. Now, what that basically means is that anytime we actually see that someone losing track of time, that actually means that someone is actually forgetting about the scare of death, let's just say, because of the fact that at that point, life itself is so meaningful, and for that life to be so meaningful, the scare of death, which is an infinite thing, obviously, death would be always, and because the life is so transcendental or so small, it would obviously be scared of it. But at that very moment, खाली ये चीज मैं बोलूंगा कि खाली ये चीज लव के लिए नहीं है, ये चीज मीनिंगफुल काम के लिए भी मैं बोल सकता हूँ कि होता है. हमें बहुत बार लगता है बहुत मीनिंगफुल कोई काम कर रहा हो, या ऐसा कोई काम कर रहा हो जिसमें वो टाइम का ट्रैक यूज कर दे, जैसे हमें पता चले कि टाइम ही कितनी जल्दी चला गया. ऐसे कॉन्वर्सेशन भी हम लोग ऐसे करते हैं. ये एक इकलौता पॉइंट होता है जिसके अंदर हम लोग डेथ को भी हम लोग को डर चला जाता है, क्योंकि लाइफ इतनी मीनिंगफुल बन चुकी होती है कि डेथ का हम लोग को मीनिंग डेथ को हम लोग इतना बड़ा नहीं मानते। और ये एक बुद्धिस्ट फिलोसफी से भी इससे मैं रिलेट करता हूँ कि बुद्धिस्ट फिलोसफी हमेशा बोलती है कि कोई भी ऐसा चीज करो, करियर हो गया, रिलेशनशिप्स ऐसे हो गए जिसमें तुम अपना टाइम का ट्रैक लूज कर दो और तुम्हें पता भी नहीं चलेगी टाइम कैसे फ्लो कर रहा है उस सेंस में, और तुम्हें उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे मोर्टैलिटी का भी फियर तुम्हें चला जाए कि तुम्हारी लाइफ इटसेल्फ इतना मीनिंगफुल बन जाए कि तुम्हें वो क्वेश्चन तुमसे नहीं पूछना पड़े कि लाइफ का क्या मीनिंग है, क्योंकि उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे तुम्हारी लाइफ की इतनी ज्यादा मीनिंग बन चुकी है तुम्हारे लिए। आई थिंक दैट इज बेसिकली अ थीम, एग्जिस्टेंशियल थीम। इसलिए फियांसे के साथ भी वैसा, करियर के साथ भी ऐसा कि वो हॉलीवुड में इसीलिए भी उसको अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है, और वो एंड ऑफ द फिल्म तक ट्रांजिशन कर लेता है बीइंग अ राइटर इन पेरिस रादर देन हैविंग अ बिग स्टिंट इन हॉलीवुड, व्हिच ही फाउंड रियली स्पाइनलेस एंड मीनिंगलेस। कि उसको उतना अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था, उसको एक्चुअल में वो अपने आप को एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर पा रहा था उस सेंस में। तो उस सेंस में भी मैं बोलूंगा कि उसको मीनिंग लास्ट में मिला, और इसलिए भी उसे और अच्छा लगा। और इसलिए पेरिस का भी डिपिक्शन है जिसके अंदर जो ब्यूटी, पेरिस को रोमांटिक इसलिए भी क्योंकि कहा जाता है क्योंकि उसकी ब्यूटी ट्रांसेंड करती है हम सबकी मॉर्टल लाइफ्स को। तो इसीलिए भी बोलूंगा कि वो फिल्म पेरिस में होना बहुत अच्छा था, और ये एग्जिस्टेंशियल मूवी है।
That's really well articulated, first of all. Thank you so much for articulating it like that. I think the film essentially talks about him, or rather us, being okay with being lost. And I think in that, in context of what Shresh also mentioned, कि being lost essentially means losing track of time in the conventional sense of it.
I think so. It's more about like जैसे पॉल कहता है कि golden age thinking की शुरुआत में बोलता है, and the Owen Wilson character, he is writing a book about a character who works in a shop which is a memorabilia shop, some kind of shop, and there's a line that nostalgia is denial, जो पॉल कहता है। तो I thought कि nostalgia is not denial, it's like it's an escape। पर जब पूरी खत्म होती है मूवी, at that time I think that Paul was actually right, that was the only time he was right, that nostalgia is denial, it's denial of the painful present, and that's the thing Owen Wilson's character is trying to escape। उसको 1920s में रहना है because his present life is unhappy, he's not in a happy relationship, he's not happy with his work, that's why he wants to escape to 1920s। And then we come across Adriana and she wants to escape to 1800s or something। तो it's like grass is always greener on the other side। जैसे हर जनरेशन बोलती है, अभी आपके पेरेंट्स भी बोलते थे कि हमारे वक्त तो ऐसा था और इतना अच्छा था, और आज की जनरेशन और आज का समय अच्छा नहीं है। या फिर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स को पूछो तो भी वही कहते हैं कि हमारे वक्त इस तरह से होता था और ऐसे खेत हुआ करते थे और नॉन पोल्यूटेड हवा रहती थी वगैरह वगैरह। हर एक को शायद, या फिर हम लोगों को भी लगता है कि पहले का समय अच्छा था। अभी आई एम 31 ईयर्स ओल्ड, और कभी कभी मुझे भी ध्यान में आता है कि मैं भी इस तरह से बात करती हूँ कि हाँ, मैं जब छोटी थी तब इस तरह से हुआ करता था। अभी के तो
अरे मैं
कार्टून
21 का हूँ, मैं भी ऐसी ही बात करता हूँ। मैं खुद, हमारे जमाने में थोड़ी रील्स था, अब आया है हमारे बचपन
हाँ,
में।
अब ये क्या सोशल मीडिया आ गया है और ये सब कुछ हो गया है। एट द एंड ऑफ द मूवी द कैरेक्टर जो जिल है, he understands that he is just trying to escape from his problems। उसको 1920s में एक्चुअली नहीं रहना है, उसको बस अपना सिचुएशन चेंज करना है, and that's what everyone wants actually।
I mean, it's a very debatable thing, right? To how long do you stay indulged in the nostalgia? Time wale sense mein, kitna, how much is too much? I mean, that's a discussion we can have right now as well. Is nostalgia as a form of escape a good way to deal with your present or your real reality or your apparent reality or your apparent situation that you are in?
There is this book called Roll of Dice by Anand Neelakantan, and I just remember this one line, and he writes like history has some habit of putting golden dust over mundane things. So it is more of like when you think about your बचपन का कि कितने अच्छे दिन थे, you forget the hardship, like वो जो मुश्किल फेज रहा होगा, तो आप स्कूल के बारे में सोचोगे तो आप वो मुश्किल वाले फेज भूल जाते हो। तो like that can sum this up कि again like even in the movie we can see this parallel, right? The golden thinking parallel। एक तरफ सॉरी जिल पेंडर वो पास में जाता है, उसको वो पीरियड बहुत अच्छा लगता है 1920s का, एंड देन एड्रियाना गोज टू और पीछे एंड शी लाइक्स दैट। बट द डिफरेंस इज लाइक जिल अंडरस्टैंड्स कि नहीं दिस इज नॉट, और मे बी वो इस वजह से समझ पाता है बिकॉज वो और पीछे जाता है टू अ पीरियड विच ही डजंट आइडियलाइज और समथिंग, राइट? अगर वो सिर्फ 1920s तक रहता तो मे बी वो वही डिसीजन लेता जो एटियाना ने लिया, टू स्टे देयर। if I'm not wrong, like she stays there, right? अच्छा तो वो script writing में भी था, movies बनाने में बहुत अच्छा था. Like this has been established in the movie, I guess. So or maybe अच्छा writer भी हो, like, but where does it end? Where do you find your final satisfaction?
No, but I completely agree to that. About, I mean, the one thing that he changed about his, like what he learned from Adriana's journey was to not repeat it. Like he didn't decide to stay like the way she did. मतलब उसने खुद का वो जो मीनिंग किसी और से मिलना चाहिए था, वो खुद ही उसने वो उस तरीके से बोल दिया. उसने सिखाने के एंड से बोला, बट खुद भी समझ लगी, मतलब तो आई थिंक दैट वाज हिज जर्नी. And it's quite possible that's the, मैंने भी एक बात बोली, that's the limitation of film as a medium also ना, कि it ends. उसके बाद तो वो तो एपिलॉग ही होता है, मतलब उसके आगे क्या है या फिर एपिलॉग में क्या आ रहा है उसके बारे में वो पता नहीं ना.
Just to get into the sort of origin of the word nostalgia, the etymology of it. The word it's a two, basically it's a portmanteau or a sandhi of two words. Greek, its origins lie in the Homeric tradition of epic storytelling, that Homer Odyssey basically. So nostalgia is broken into nostos, that is homecoming, and algos, that is agony. Till the 17th century, till the Romantic era set in, nostos and algos, it meant the agony of homecoming. It was generally used to refer to a very debilitating or a crushing condition of soldiers at war who are pining or longing for home. So it was considered to be some sort of a mental blockade for people who are not able to perform an action or a deed. Like if you somehow think of the Mahabharata age, like say 300, 400 BC. So what Krishna is actually preaching to Arjuna is that he should overcome his nostalgia of fighting his own cousins, of homecoming, because they shared the same land, the same home, and then kind of perform his duty. But after the Romantic era, after John Keats and all, William Blake and all these other poets came in, the definition of nostalgia changed to a more positive, a more elevated emotion of connecting to your roots or connecting to any aspect that defines you, that completes you, and that you feel should have lasted or should have transcended space-time, but has somehow become prey to the ravages of erosion and of destruction. So nostalgia was the transition throughout history of the word also is something from a very negative connotation, something that stops human beings from realizing their full potential, from being Ubermensch or the maximum man, as Nietzsche put it in is Thus Spake Zarathustra, to writers exercising or advocating for nostalgia as a means to an end. And what is that end? That end is basically, calling it escapism would be a very surface level interpretation. The end to nostalgia is essentially realizing a part of you that you feel you have lost or that you feel you need to hold on to.
Just to ask again around this. So you said how the definition of nostalgia shifted right after the beginning of the Romantic era. So I mean, one of the reasons
after the 1700s, the definition became a bit more positive.
So one of the reasons for that would be also a sense of alienation you are feeling from your existentialism ka pura, and the wars happening.
The Romantic era is defined by authors and poets and writers who are highlighting or bringing to the foreground human emotions as the arena for conflict, rather than apotheosis as a conflict. Apotheosis as in the human struggle to become divine, or the divinity within humanity, which the Renaissance and post-Renaissance or the Enlightenment period was all about. So the Romantic era is about human emotions, and that your emotions can get the better of you, and the fact that you are mortal also can seep into or trickle down into your flaws. So owning up to flaws and owning up to emotions is what characterizes the Romantic era. Losing yourself to an ideal more than that. Guru Dutt Cinema, again, the last of the romantics that man was. Losing yourself to an ideal of poetry, of truth, social justice, whatever it may be. That is why for Owen Wilson's character, it is about trying to find his own voice and trying to find a rift in time where his voice is somehow matters more than what it does in his real life, where he's stifled by his wife, or I think his fiance, whatever that is, I don't remember. Fiance. Yeah, fiance. He's stifled by her, I mean, not lust, but her obsession with materialism, her derogatory and her extremely raffish, demeaning parents. Also the fact that he's entered a writer's block phase. But honestly, the one flaw of the film which I find is that it romanticizes the artistic ideal a bit too much to discount writer. So it also glorifies writer's block in its own way by saying that it is a path to, say, discovering great writers hypothetically sitting with each other, which actually writer's block is essentially you're stuck in life at a moment where you don't know the past, you can't escape the past, and you fear the future. So you cling to the past and you fear the future is that writer's block. It is a metastasization of the present, but something which is so rigid and so conformist that it drowns out any sort of innovative urge that you might have. So that is why nostalgia for this writer's block suffering, this writer's block victim, is essentially a path out of being caged in the present.
So what I actually found from the internet was that Adriana is not actually a real person. And I actually think that, and she was not actually the girlfriend of Picasso or whatever was mentioned. So my actual theory is that, in fact, even writer knew this. And Adriana was basically an object petite, which is a French concept, which is an unattainable object of desire. Now, why did the writer protagonist create Adriana was because he saw several flaws in his fiancée and even in his career, and all of the flaws and all of the incompetencies that he saw in his life was actually fulfilled by Adriana, in which she was really attractive and physically attractive, and not only that, she also brought in a lot of the qualities that he actually aspired in a partner, which his fiancée even did not supply to him. Let's just say, even in terms of the interest, even in terms of the person that she was. So Adriana is an unattainable object of desire in this, wherein he actually wanted someone like Adriana in his life, and so he imagined her continuously throughout this, and he was obviously, because of this, he was actually attracted to Adriana in the entirety of the things. And even at the end, obviously, he realized that it wasn't worth it, and he has to actually come to the real life. And also, even all of this was actually caused because of all the suffering that he faced, because he actually, I think that he inside himself, he knew that even his fiancée wasn't someone right for him, and even the Hollywood stints that I was not right for him, and all of this because of the suffering, and because he had read so many writers. What happened, the suffering was, his mind actually, it was a coping mechanism for the mind to actually now bring all the writers to life in that sense, at that point. So what the mind was trying to solve the problem that he previously had in a very different way, in a very surrealistic way, let's just say, because it was actually brought towards to life, all these things that he had in his mind, all the suffering that he had. The mind was trying to solve this, and it was done through the surrealist thing, because he read a lot of writers and a lot of painters, a lot of artists in the 1920s, and especially 1920s, because this was a very golden age in terms of the economic development in North America and the Western Europe, wherein it was known as the Roaring Twenties, wherein it saw a great economic boom in those times.
I think it's also a trait or a trait of romanticism as well, to idolize a certain person or a place. So I think you pointing out the fact that Adriana was a figment of his imagination, of an idealistic person who fulfills his limitations as well, and the limitations of his partner as well. So, and then eventually in his real world, he ends up settling for a manifestation of a French woman who could, settle up that gap in whatever way possible, in 30%, 40%, 50% way possible. मतलब जो भी हो, मतलब उसके आजू बाजू जो भी मिल जाए वैसा कुछ. So, so I think it felt like a settlement in that sense. Duality, or this conflict that was in the entire film between romanticism and being logical. Like, दो तीन बार use हुआ ये term कि I'm more logical, let's be more logical, or I am the more logical. In that sense, first of all, what's wrong in being romantic, and like, let's talk about the perils of being a romantic. What are the perils of being a romantic, and what are the perils of, we know the perils of being a logical person, wo capitalism ki puri duniya pata hai apne ko, but let's talk about what are the perils of being a romantic. What do you think are the flaws of any person who's a romantic?
Today, since you know about that tree walk that you've gone to, Pranav also knows, we three have had that experience. Now, while walking
Radhika as well.
who also Radhika as well, yeah. Just by walking on the path, I am looking at the canopy. Okay. कभी भी मैं किसी भी चीज से ठुक सकती हूँ, but I am just cherishing it so much because now I am a romantic for the trees. So I think that is obviously a huge flaw. Plus, it's very difficult to promote. I feel there will all it will always be niche, because books are fading away, and the thought of those ideas is fading away. You will be considered a very different kind of person, and your entire self or your identity as a whole is not say fit in nahi ho payegi fit easily. So yeah, probably that. Like, I will just not cherish. If you're a romantic, you know what exactly you like. Your preferences will be rigid, and I think you will probably end up not be able to cherish the joys that most people cherish, because consider your ideas to be slightly more superior than what most capitalists will prefer.
I mean, I don't know if I'm appropriate in saying that, but I feel that romanticism comes with a sense of privilege or a sense of choice to remain in that sense of nostalgia. I think it tends to view things from a very idealistic, privileged, sanitized, exoticized, mystified, all the fights
Yeah.
perspectives, and that makes it you forget about the issues of, let's say, simply put Paris for here. तो पेरिस में भी तो होंगे दिक्कतें कि नहीं है वहाँ पे, मतलब उसका क्या, तो वहाँ पे जो रॉबरी का सीन होते हैं इतने ज्यादा वहाँ पे, that's a simpler way to put it out, obviously. I think Pradam wants to say something. I don't. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So you you use the word exoticization because that is precisely what the film, I would say, indulges in, decrying it as a flaw. I'm just saying that's what it
It's
does.
It's aware also that it's doing that.
Right, it works. It works. If it works, it's fine. Okay. So the thing is that these artists are shown either at cafes, at parties, and they're oblivious of the world around them. They're in these bubbles of these perpetual repartee sessions where one person's art is being pitted against another's for the consumption of the spectators. That is not even Owen Wilson as the writer, but us as the audience, where they are being brought into an arena where thoughts are battling out, and they're juxtaposed with personal flaws, desires, emotions, and conflicts, and all of that is somehow, I would say, is voyeuristic for us as spectators and as the audience, because these are idols and these are icons of art that we are supposed to admire. So watching them either just wrangling out their flaws, or just arm wrestling, intellectual arm wrestling is a spectacle in the film. That is what fuels the bubbles that Owen Wilson and Adrian are somehow drawn towards together. So those bubbles burst for Owen when he realizes, oh my god, no, my life is different, and I live in 2011 or 12. I don't live in the 1920s or 30s, and I can't be in a party that never ends. To quote Govind Nilani's party from 1984, you're part of a party that never ends. This means that you're not living the life that you're supposed to. You're already in basically in a life that is an artifice, a contrivance created as a metaphor to not confront but hide from the truths of what the human condition is.
I remember during the wars, there was a poem that got really viral. It was about from the country where the war, like the country which is a victim of the war largely, that even I want to write about trees, even I want to write about rivers, but all I see is dead bodies around. So how will I focus on the rivers and the trees?
I'd like to mention about the big five personality traits in this. So basically, why is that helpful in this is because there's a trait in that called openness to experience, which is like a creativity dimension, which means that we are like, even in the abstract room, everyone who is creative of some sort and likes to indulge in all these romantic ideas, the abstract ideas, like to actually even discuss these things and all. So I think why is that important here is because a writer is also the protagonist is also that, and I understand that sometimes it may seem illogical, but his biology or his entire genetics actually define, I think, what it actually means to be openness or creative in that sense, in which he actually needs a dose of that creativity or that romantic element in his life, because his mind actually works in that way in which he actually gets a lot of joy just reading about or just living the life of, I guess, the writers, the artists, and the paintings even. So everything actually entices his life and really makes his life joyful in that sense, because of, I think, his biology in that sense, because I guess even all of us, we're all interested in art, in creative thinking, in abstract objects. And so I think a part of that is inescapable, and I think that should actually be integrated rather than actually being experiencing throughout, which I think we all do, that we integrate a part of bringing the romanticism and bringing all these abstract concepts into our life, so that we're actually joyful about it, because it's inescapable from that. Even the artists that have lived in Europe, even like Van Gogh and all those artists, they led their life very terribly because they were really creative, and they actually wanted to indulge in these novel ideas and these creative ideas and the concepts, the paintings and everything. And so I think it is inescapable, but it should be integrated therefore into the life, wherein everything may seem much more boring to the protagonist, but just having a part of the day with thinking and with imagining all these writers would also be important in that sense, for the protagonist.
Absolutely, and also because what art helps us do at times or most times is that it helps us articulate our own feelings. Now, art in any shape or form could be, medium doesn't matter, but or format doesn't matter, but it helps us articulate our own thoughts that either we are not able to, from a skill standpoint, from a time standpoint, we are not able to express that or emote that in that sense. So it gives us a voice as well. It gives us words as well. So when Hemingway was saying that, हमें भी कुछ ऐसे hit होता है ना इस वजह से, इतनी पुरानी बातें आज तक क्यों रह जाती है? Because our thoughts to us might be original, but they have always have been spoken more beautifully by somebody. That doesn't mean that our thoughts are not original. खाली वो better तरीके से बोला गया है. तो उसको you might as well use that to articulate your own thoughts. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. There was one more thing that in the film was mentioned about like Picasso always remained in his room and to create art. I mean, it's not something that's a thematic theme nahi hai film ka, but still the idea of an excellence pe pahunchne ke liye, to remain closeted, to remain in that particular thing, and to have a sense of romanticization of your form of art as well is required. Excellence ke liye, not just to, for your own gratification, but for an excellence or a standpoint, maybe that's required. But from a romantic standpoint, I think one thing that is a peril of being a romantic also is that you express, you emote, and you feel fully. And I don't think it is a very overwhelming feeling to express and emote and feel fully. Not everybody can do that. Like, to completely give in ek pure tarike se. That can be very overwhelming and overpowering. So I think that's one peril of being a romantic, and a good thing as well. But depends on the perspective you're seeing it from. And also you end up, or you can destroy your own life or somebody else's life because of that as well. Now, not from a place standpoint, from a person or a romantic standpoint. For a specific idea or for a specific person, you might destroy your own life for that or somebody else's for that. It's a life of no consequences, I think. And again, coming from a place of privilege, that we shouldn't forget. And also being lost, quote unquote, as in the film mentioned, is not everyone's cup of tea. Clarity काफी लोगों को चाहिए होती है. It's मतलब वो इतना आसान नहीं है. That guy already had a Beverly Hills में रह रहा था वो. इतना पैसा था, तो he could take that being lost वाला path. Not everybody can, right? So I mean, that should not be forgotten as well. I think it's a very interesting or important perspective to have.
That is why I think surrealist painters were also brought in beautifully in this film, wherein what I actually think is that surrealistic painters actually bring all the philosophical concepts to life in what they actually paint. So all the art that we actually see from several of the surrealist painters are actually basically the philosophical concepts that we discuss, or the abstract concepts we discuss, that is also brought to life. And that is what I just wanted to add on the point of that.
Favorite of the people of the cameos, like what was your favorite of the cameos?
Yeah, I'm forgetting the name of the actor, but Salvador Dali.
Lovely. Adrian or something. Adrian Brody.
Yeah, he was very funny. और छोटा सा रोल था, but बहुत ही funny था वो. Like actually, he is mentioning rhinoceros over and over again, and then I googled him that ये है क्या actual में. I used to like to paint rhinoceros and in different shades and different ways. So yeah, that was a cameo I liked.
We actually some months back, Abstract में we had a session on surrealist painters and surrealist artists. So we Dali के बारे में बहुत पढ़ा, उसकी films भी देखी हमने साथ में बैठ के. So he was a filmmaker, artist, like I think that was my favorite part of the entire thing as well, because he is talking about existentialism with surrealist painters. Like I was like, ब्रो किसी से भी बात कर, इन लोग से क्यों बात कर रहा है
हाँ,
इसके बारे में,
exactly.
मतलब ये लोग की तो पल्ले उल्टी चीजें पड़ती है हर चीज।
Like he is talking about something logical,
या
and they are all surrealists, so they don't get it. They don't get it. ऐसा नहीं, but they are in their own space. They are in their own bubble. Like अगर I don't know about other artists जो उस scene में होते हैं, but सब अपने अपने फील्ड के बारे में ही सोचते हैं जब वो बात कर रहा है. One is talking about the film. I see a film, and the one says that I see a photograph in this. I see a rhinoceros, and Owen Wilson is like, I see a problem here.
yeah, I mean that was one of the best and the most lovely scenes. Like मतलब अगर आपको appropriately place करना हो, दिखाना हो कि surrealist painters क्या होते थे, कैसे होते थे, that's the scene you would show it पाया. मतलब कि भाई देखो, को तुम नॉर्मल बात करो, उनको नॉर्मल नहीं लगने वाली है, उनको लगेगा कि कुछ एक्चुअली वो ज्यादा सबटेक्सचुअली बात हो रही है वहाँ पे.
नहीं, और ऐसे बहुत heavy नहीं है, like it feels natural. That's
Absolutely.
Do you think all the things, matlab, there were some quotes which are very prominent. For example, there was this one quote where Hemingway says that no subject is terrible if the story is honest, if the prose is clean, and if it affirms grace, courage under pressure. वैसा कुछ. And you know, all these looked like प्रॉपर कोट्स और उसको किसी तरह तो नरेशन में डाला है. तो गर्ट्रूड स्टाइन का एक कोट था वेयर शी सेज द आर्टिस्ट जॉब इज नॉट टू सकम टू डिस्पेयर but to find an antidote for the emptiness of existence. And I was like, wow, auntie, thanks. So probably I think, yeah, she was the voice of consciousness for me, and I think I'll look her up proper deep this time after now that I've seen the film.
हम लोग मूवी के अंदर बहुत ज्यादा इंटरमिंगलिंग ऑफ फ्रेज भी मैंने देखा कि ब्लैक्स भी इसमें थे, और मैंने इसके बारे में रिसर्च भी किया तो पता चला कि 1920s में भी फ्रांस में बहुत ज्यादा इंटरमिंगलिंग ऑफ वाइट्स और ब्लैक रेस थे उस टाइम पे. रादर के हम लोग ऐसा सोचते हैं कि पहले बहुत स्लेवरी थी, बहुत खराब था, और अभी बहुत अच्छा हो गया, बट फ्रांस में 1920s में बहुत एक्सेप्टेंस था रेस के भी प्रति, और ब्लैक्स को वाइट्स के बहुत सारे रिस्पेक्ट्स में इक्वल माना जाता था, और वैसा भी स्ट्रक्चर था. तो वो मुझे बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग लगा.
फर्स्ट सीन में देखा मैं समझ गया भाई ये तो वुडी एलन ही है, नॉट बिकॉज आई न्यू वो बना रहा है, but the character itself I realize ये Woody Allen ही है, because the way the all over the place, lost, talking so much, and something going on in his head about relationships, so just fit really well in that sense. But from a screenplay standpoint, it fell flat. From a drama standpoint, the film fell flat for maintaining that sense of breeziness, that sense of nostalgia, romanticization of Paris, and the background music के साथ कैसे कर रहे हैं, वो सब ठीक है, wonderful, beautiful. So tonally they didn't change at all, but when they it should have pricked me or should have made me feel for the characters. I felt that I was in the film till the end just to see कि और नया कौन आने वाला है. I didn't really after a point I didn't really empathize with our character, main character, or anybody else as well. पता नहीं. I remember Radhika was also watching, and I think 15 मिनट बाकी थे, and she was like 15 मिनट बाकी है, कुछ हो क्यों नहीं रहा यहाँ पे स्क्रीन में, बोला सब कुछ के लास्ट 2 मिनट में होने वाला है क्या. And I mean it covered it up nicely, sure, but I'm saying from the point of view of screenplay, वो drama highs and lows उतने सही से नहीं आए निखर के. It was possibly or probably a conscious choice to do that, but जैसे वहाँ पे, जैसे for example जब वो रेचल मैकएडम्स के साथ झगड़ा होता है and he just leaves, ऐसा लगा कि उसको बाथरूम जाने आएगा वापस, पता नहीं चला. मतलब he didn't, the reality or the stakes weren't really, मतलब वो चमके नहीं उस टाइम पे. And I mean that was something that really, so I couldn't see the different aspects of Owen as a person. कब शांत होता है वो, कब रोता है वो, vulnerable कब होता है वो, मतलब वो उतना नहीं आया. But ठीक है, like the good thing was that at least from it was an ode or a letter to all the artists that Woody Allen or all the other people also have admired. In that sense it was genuine, and वो element में, वो aspect में काफी अच्छे से deliver किया. मतलब डेविड देवा ने वाजा
that point से भी if you say कि सिर्फ हेमिंगवे की है या सिर्फ उसकी बातें हो रही है, तो it wouldn't have worked. सिर्फ हेमिंगवे के वो देखने जाएंगे लोग, पर हेमिंगवे वो जेल्डा भी है, वो हेमिंगवे भी है, वो गर्ट्रूड भी है, तो फिर मतलब बनेगी ना बात.
Absolutely.
Plus why screenplay, I think I read it somewhere कि this film really got, मतलब होते ना भाई intersection हो गया basically, people who are hardcore literature and people who are hardcore films. तो it's a good marketing way कि नई audience आके देखेगी पिक्चर को.
Yeah, completely. And you know, one thing I think Woody Allen mentioned about the writing process as well was that I did not want to focus on the magical aspect of it. मुझे
Yeah.
उसमें जो relationship explore करना था, इसका journey explore कर रहा था. So इसलिए I didn't try to justify or find a logical reasoning for कि मतलब उसे अचानक से ये क्यों ऐसा दिखने लग जाता है या फिर वैसे कोई actually machine आ गई क्या या फिर क्या हो गया. Because that doesn't really matter. Film as a medium allows you to play around with that. आपको फालतू का उसको जस्टिफाई करने में 15-20 मिनट एक्स्ट्रा डालने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू कैन जस्ट यू क्रिएट एन एम्बियंस इन सच अ वे, ऐसे आप बनाओ उसको मिस ऑन सैन को कि आपको बिलीव हो जाए, एंड दैट्स फाइन. मान जाएंगे लोग, बिकॉज आपको अपना पॉइंट अक्रॉस करना है कि खाली लॉजिक ढूंढना है उस चीज में. सो
And वो वाला part where at the end उसके dad से पूछता है, oh I got a person follow him, and he's like, oh what came out of it? I don't know, the detective went missing. I think that was epic कि हाँ चलो, they're continuing the narrative that he still has the access to travel back to that era.